Today's episode is all about Loveys, otherwise known as stuffed animals, blankets, blankies, or comfort items that children sometimes like to sleep with. I'm going to answer some common questions I receive around the topic of Loveys. Is it a good idea to introduce a lovey to your child? If so, when is a good time to introduce said lovey? Can a child have too many loveys? What to do if your child doesn't show interest in getting attached to a lovey? We're going to talk about all things loveys today. Hi, I'm Allison, Egidi, a pediatric sleep and wellness coach and a mom of two. I love to help parents find solutions. This is How Long Till Bedtime. A lovey small blanket or stuffed animal can be a great comfort item for some young children. But parents often have some questions about the whole concept of using a lovey. So let's start with the basics. The American Academy of Pediatrics Safe Sleep Recommendations say that babies should sleep in an empty crib or bassinet until they are at least 12 months old. That means you just want a fitted sheet on a safe mattress, and you want no blankets, bumpers, pillows, loveys, etc. in the crib with your child. Once your child is 12 months, you can introduce a lovey anytime after that. And if you have questions about the safety of introducing a lovey to your child, you can absolutely talk to your pediatrician at the 12-month checkup. I do recommend introducing a lovey anytime after your child is 12 months, but I don't think there's any perfect time to introduce one. So if you haven't introduced one yet and you're still interested and your child is 2 or 3 years old, you can absolutely still introduce them. But I really encourage parents not to have any big expectations when it comes to introducing a lovey or your child getting attached to one. Some toddlers and young children will take to a lovey very quickly, but some definitely aren't really that interested, particularly when we're talking about the younger group, the closer to 12, 13, 14-month-old group. That being said, even if your 12-month-old has no interest in a lovey, they may attach to one when they're a bit older, say 2 or 3 years old. If you'd like to introduce a lovey at 12 months, I recommend introducing a small, soft, stuffed animal or blanket with no loose parts or things that could be picked off or bitten off, like little eyeballs. Prior to introducing the lovey to your 12-month-old, you can play with it with your child during the day. You can let them hold it and snuggle with it outside of the crib. You can also even take it a step further and sleep with it a few nights in your bed so the lovey will start to smell like you. And then when it's time to introduce this comfort item to your child in their crib, you can either just set it in the corner and just show your child where it's going to be, or you can offer it to your child when you put them in the crib. If they've shown some interest in snuggling with it outside of the crib, you can put it right next to them and offer it to them when you put them down. I would start with just one lovey in the crib, something that you've exposed your child to, but let's not overcomplicate it. If they don't show any interest in the lovey, just leave it in the corner of the crib. It doesn't mean you chose the wrong one or that you need to introduce different ones. Your child may take to this lovey down the road. If you're introducing a lovey to a child who's a little bit older, say 2, 3, 4 years old, you could have them choose one lovey to be their designated sleep lovey. So the 12-month-olds, we're going to have to choose for them. But for the older kiddos, you could suggest that they're going to start to have a sleep lovey, and you could have them choose the lovey that they want. But we want it to be within reason, and we want it to be a soft, safe item that doesn't have any loose parts that your child could pick at or get off. And we don't want things like toy trucks, anything that's going to be hard and potentially wake them up if they roll over on it. So I mentioned we want to have low expectations, and I'll just share how the Lovey introduction went with my girls. I don't remember exactly when I introduced it, but I think with both it was right around 12 months when I put one in their crib. One of my girls didn't get attached to any Loveys until I want to say she was 4 or 5 years old. She really was indifferent to them. And then suddenly, what seemingly out of the blue, she had a favorite 3. They suddenly had names, and this is not a child who typically named any of her stuffed animals or dolls. She wasn't even into stuffed animals or dolls, but suddenly we had these 3 and they had names, and she loved having them in the bed with her. She often used one as a pillow, and she snuggled the others, but she had strong feelings about having them. In fact, they are still in her bed today. My other daughter got very attached to one very specific Lovey named Wolfie when she was younger. We actually happened to pick it up at the children's hospital when we were there for my other daughter's broken ankle, and they were, trying to cheer everyone up. And she became super attached to this Lovey after completely ignoring the one in her crib. So she was maybe about 3 years old, and this thing was the love of her life. But a couple years later, she kind of became nonchalant about the whole Lovey. The Lovey is still in her room, but she doesn't really sleep with it, and she just kind of outgrew it. So she kind of fell into the camp of could take it or leave it, then became super attached to this one for 2 or 3 years, and then kind of take it or leave it again. Whereas my other daughter was indifferent, then became attached to 3, and then still really wants to have them around. So every child is going to be different. I certainly work with some babies who are between 12 and 24 months who instantly seem to want to snuggle with a Lovey once it was introduced. So while I think it's a smaller group, there are some in that younger group who really just have that desire to have something soft near their face or to hold onto it or to rub it between their fingers. And a little bit, I think, is related to the sensory and kind of what soothes them. Some of them, it is rubbing things, and you'll hear about the kids who like the Loveys with the tags because they like to rub them between their fingers. So every child is going to be different. Now, let's discuss some potential challenges that come with Loveys or that can come with Loveys and how to handle them, because this is what I don't think is addressed enough and what I often have to help clients navigate. Number 1, the Lovey gets lost. This is the worst, and I'm always so stressed when I see some parent posting in a local Facebook group that their child left their Lovey at the park, and has anyone seen this bear or this bunny because my child can't sleep without it. And I think, oh, that's the worst, because losing a Lovey that is associated with sleep can definitely cause sleep struggles. This is why I want to strongly encourage you to only have your sleep Loveys in the home. So kids can have multiple, quote, Loveys, but the ones that are associated with sleep should stay in your child's bedroom. They could have a separate Lovey that they pal around town with, but the one they use for sleep, I would strongly encourage you to keep at home. The only time it should leave your home is when you're traveling overnight, because it is something they associate with sleep, and it can help them sleep when you're not at home. But words of caution here. When you travel with a Lovey, be sure that you're just using it for sleep when you're on the road, so it doesn't get left in some random place. And then you really have to make a mental note to look for the Lovey and make sure you pack it and bring it home. We left one of my daughter's Loveys at a beach house. The only thing I could think is it had gotten stuffed under the blanket or under a pillow, so that when I was sweeping the rooms, I just didn't see it. I'm guessing it was under the comforter. And I was not taking count of the Loveys. And she was very distressed. And we tried to get it back. We were unsuccessful. They claimed they couldn't find it. I know it was in that house. And it was a real bummer for her. So if you take a Lovey on the road, put some sort of reminder on your phone or some sort of alarm the day you're going to be packing up so you know to double check you packed the Lovey. Okay, a second challenge that some may face around the Lovey is that your child may start to collect a lot of Loveys that they want to sleep with. And then beyond it maybe making their crib or bed really overcrowded, they may start to lose track of some of them during the night or at bedtime. And then they suddenly need a parent to come in and find said Loveys. This is one of the biggest reasons I encourage parents I work with to limit the amount of Loveys that a child sleeps with. So I really like to have a specific 1, 2, or 3 max that are designated for sleep. And then I really try not to let kids bring others into the bed because it's just more clutter. Think about how they always talk about we don't want to have a lot of mental clutter in our lives. And if your child is having to keep track of lots of Loveys in their bed, even if they aren't the designated Loveys, it can really cause a sleep struggle. So limit the Loveys that are in the bed to 1, 2, 3 max. Okay, a third challenge. Your child starts choosing new Loveys as a stall tactic at bedtime. So even if you've limited the Loveys to 1, 2, or 3, suddenly it's, well, I want to trade out my bunny here for this giraffe tonight. Or I left something downstairs. I left my puppy downstairs, and tonight I want to sleep with my puppy. It is a great stall tactic. I get to hear about it often. And so I would like to encourage you to not let the Loveys become a game around stalling bedtime. So when your child chooses their 1, 2, or 3 Loveys, let them know that those are the designated sleep Loveys, and we're not going to be changing them up. And if you have a child who has a strong desire to change them up because they're not overly attached to any one particular Lovey, but they do like having one, I would do it on a monthly rotation. So for the month of May, this is the only Lovey or Loveys that you will get. We're not changing them up. In June, if you'd like to have a different Lovey or change out all 3 of your Loveys, we can do that. But then those will be your Loveys for all the month of June. So the most often I recommend switching them out would be monthly. But I will tell you what a lot of my clients find is that once a child keeps the same Loveys for a month or so and the game is kind of done, they aren't able to stall anymore, that stall tactic kind of fades away and they don't even really have a desire to change out the Loveys. So sometimes they don't even have to change it out once they hold for a month with the same ones. But if you get to the new month and your child brings it back up, you can certainly say, of course, it's June now, let's change them out. And then you can change again in July if you want to. All right, so those are the most common challenges I hear about as it relates to Loveys. So if you've been thinking about introducing a Lovey or you've been navigating some challenges with your child's Lovey or Loveys, I hope this episode was helpful. A Lovey or a security item can provide comfort, and I do think it can help with sleep. So introduce one to your baby or your child who's older, as long as they're over 12 months. But don't be afraid to set some boundaries around the Loveys. Hey, if you've been finding this podcast helpful, can you please do me a huge favor and take a moment to rate the podcast on Apple or Spotify? That helps us reach more parents with this free resource. Thank you so much in advance. Your support means the world to us. I'll see you back here next week. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to How Long Till Bedtime. To learn how we can work together to improve your child's sleep, please visit sleepandwellnesscoach.com.